Hello and welcome in, everybody. My name is Bryce Koon, and happy Sunday evening. We are getting ready to rock and roll here as we are now officially under 2 weeks away from kickoff as Georgia Tech is going to take on Florida State. It's going to be a noon kickoff for people on the East Coast. It's going to be 11 a.m. for me on Saturday, August 24th, and college football as a whole is right around the corner. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're watching on any of the platforms we got going on, you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like the channel as well. If you're watching over on X, whether it's on my profile or at the Crowded Booth, make sure you give both of those a follow, and then head on to the YouTube channel as well and hit subscribe, hit notifications. You know when we go live. As hey, we're getting into the thick of things. I was telling the team the other day that we are getting ready to rock and roll in terms of doing regular season shows. I mean, we're almost there. And in fact, Georgia Tech shows will start and Swarm Talk will start back on the regular season schedule this week, which is going to be a lot of fun. And I'm glad to announce in 1 second here, we're going to change this audio over. That probably sounds 10 times better. We're obviously going to get ready to move forward in what we're doing Georgia Tech wise on the Swarm Talk show. So make sure that you subscribe to the channel every single Sunday night and every single Thursday night during the regular season. And we're going to sprinkle some other content in here as well as some written content. Head over to thecrowdedbooth.com. You can sign up for free there as well. And then last, certainly not least, before we get started here, make sure if you're a Tech fan or if you're a fan of any team, you're in the Atlanta area, Crowded Booth tailgate happening at Bobby Dodd Stadium on the campus of Georgia Tech for Georgia Tech, Georgia State, August 31st, week 1 of college football. You're going to want to join us to stay in tune with the information. Make sure you join the Discord and make sure that you hang around the social platforms as well so you can get all the latest information. Without further ado, it's Swarm Talk here on the Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. Coming on the Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.
All right. Welcome in. Make sure you hit that like button, hit subscribe, and we're rocking and rolling here on a Sunday evening. Talking college football, talking the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, folks, we've taken a look at each positional preview on the offensive side of the football. And I think if you've watched what I've said, there is a lot of reason for optimism about what the Georgia Tech offense can accomplish in 2024 if things go right. If success continues for certain spots and if certain position groups elevate, it's going to be a lot of fun. What we're going to talk about tonight, though, is the defense. And I think there's a lot of varying opinions in this Georgia Tech fan base on where things stand defensively with what this grouping can do. A lot of new faces in terms of, coaching staff, some new faces that have reportedly through fall camp have been big pieces and welcome additions through the transfer portal. And then you've got some old faces that need to, whether they had a tough year last year, whether they had an injury-riddled campaign in 2023, they need to step up as well. So we can kick this off by saying it's got to be a collective effort. I think that there are players that can be very good on this defense if things go correctly. I don't think that there is, when you look on paper, and there's very few across the country, where you can say there is a legitimate first-round talent or a star player somewhere on this defense. I mean, obviously, you look at other programs. Program I cover, LSU's got a guy like Harold Perkins. Other programs have their own version of guys. I don't know, and this is once again we're saying this on August 11th, 2023 or 2024. Sorry, we're saying that on paper we don't see anybody that has that, but that could develop throughout the season, and maybe Tech does have a star type of all ACC first team player that first or second round talent that we don't know yet, kind of heading into 2024. But I think that when we sit here, let's see what can happen. Let's see what we can talk about, and we're going to go through from defensive line to linebackers up to the secondary, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on from the coaching staff, from talking with people around the fall camp, and what's standing out. And I always encourage people, good or bad news, people love to run with what they hear in fall camp. If it's positive for your team, you are going to pump that up. You're going to elevate it. Continue to elevate that news until it becomes this mountain, this massive wave crashing into your first game. And then on the other side of things, if you are maybe more inclined to, maybe on the negative side of things, you're going to elevate that and vice versa. So let's all take it with a grain of salt. Like, let's all just kind of, calm down and move forward and understand too. I think this is something a lot of Tech fans came to the conclusion in 2023 is you just got to show. Like, I don't really care what you have to say. Look, media sessions are fantastic. They're good to ask questions. Media viewing periods can be valuable in terms of what you can see. But having results based off of your games is going to tell you. And so I think a lot of Tech fans are like, there's one side maybe of the pendulum, and maybe people can talk about this in the comments. There's one side of the pendulum that could say, it's a brand new staff. I'm excited. I'm ready. This is going to be a top 5 unit in the ACC. It's going to be a top 50 unit in the country. We'll see. Like, we'll see what happens. Will, I just had this is crazy. Will's in the background right now. I just had my doorbell ring, so I'm going to need to. This is crazy. This is nuts. Got to make sure it's not my wife with my kids. So you got to love it. But we'll be right back. We'll just run some ads, I guess. That's what we'll do. Hey everyone, Bryce Koon here with the Crowded Booth, and I'm excited to partner with Milton and Drew McCluskey as they get on their new venture, the Cajun Cousins Company. It's an all-stop shop for some of the best food and atmosphere entertainment that you're going to be able to have, especially this fall as college football is right around the corner. What is Cajun Cousins Company? Well, Milt decided to start this business back in Columbia, South Carolina. That's where they're based out of. Drew initially joined him after spending some time with the Saints, but they offer catered Cajun delicacies such as crawfish boils and Aunt Dottie's jambalaya. They bring everything and they can set up anywhere. Look, folks, they're passionate about giving people a reason to gather and to get to the culture that they love so much. They're expanding that brand to the low country of South Carolina, the upstate area, and other areas of the Southeast. So look, if you're going to throw that tailgate party or you're going to have a big gathering, reach out to Cajun Cousins Company today over at CajunCousinsCO.com to get that quote. Tell them the Crowded Booth sent you. We can't wait to see what they have in store this fall. We're back. Cajun Cousins, great company. Check them out. But we're back. False alarm. We're all good. Where were we? Maxwell says, hi, Will. Where were we in our conversation? I think we were talking about if you're going to look at this side of the ball, it's okay to be overly excited. A lot of people want to believe in newer, better, and those things. And I think to a certain extent, it's going to be better. A lot of people are still concerned personnel-wise, myself included. I feel like I need to see some things. That's the way that's the lens the way I view it, I should say. That's the lens through which I look. So when we talk about defensively, what they could bring to the table, let's kind of get into this. And I've got 3 big questions, a question for each tier, I guess we could say, the first tier, second tier, third tier, each level. Let's go with that. And then we're going to take a look at the 2024 outlook. We'll see what happens here. I mean, get your comments in. Will might even want to open the phone lines. Ralph's not here tonight, but we might have to see. We might open up the phone lines tonight. I don't know. We'll have to see. Let's start with the first one. Can the defensive line disrupt? look, this is pretty much a twofold thing for me. When your secondary is getting beat and you don't feel like your secondary is great, and I'm not saying Georgia Tech's secondary isn't great. What I'm saying is your defensive line at some point has to be disruptive in terms of getting to the quarterback, forcing bad decisions, doing a lot of different things. I guess this is Will. He says, I'll get on the screen if we're opening up the phone lines. They have to be able to create negative plays. Georgia Tech over the past 2 years and under Andrew Thacker's tutelage was very good at creating momentum type of plays. The problem that seemed to come with that, there was not a lot of consistency. They became ultra reliant on momentum type of plays. None bigger than the game in Miami last year. So while those create for fun memories, I think that my question is can you be consistently disruptive, consistently getting into the backfield and forcing the decision maker and the quarterback to make a bad decision? Like, is that something that you can do consistently at a high level? So that's for me is where this the buck ends. Like, we can talk about personnel and we're going to do that. Like, we'll talk about names. I mean, we have mentioned multiple times Zeke Biggers and Horace Lockett. If those two guys are inside, it's time for them to step up. Like, it's time, and not so much Horace Lockett being a freshman last year, but it's time for Zeke Biggers to be that guy. He has shown it in flashes, but if this defensive line is going to be able to protect the integrity of the entire defense, okay, like I'll just say this. When you go back and look last season, a lot of the leading tacklers, LaMiles Brooks, Clayton Powell-Lee, Jalen King, like, it's not that they can't make tackles. I love watching those guys make tackles. Each in their own right, they can do stuff. You can't be your safeties and your defensive backs cannot lead in tackles every single year, and it starts up front. So a guy like Zeke Biggers, I like what he brings to the table. He's a massive man. He's a space eater. He can do a lot of different things for you, but he's got to be disruptive. If he's disruptive in 2024, that changes the entire integrity of this defensive line. Like, you can do a lot of different things. Horace Lockett, you start to look around interior. Yes, you've got Micaiah Scott. I like Micaiah Scott. I think in certain times, if Georgia Tech really wants to go big up front, they could slide Scott, out to a 5 technique if they wanted to. But if you're going to play the 3 technique and you're going to be a guy that does that in Horace Lockett, like, your time's now. I know you're just a sophomore. You've got to step up. You have to turn around and be a difference maker. You're a part of the solution. So I like both of those guys. And a lot of things coming out of fall camp and reports and talking with some people who have been there is when we look at the edge position, this is another problem that Tech had last year, was setting the edge and funneling everything back inside. If the middle of your defense is going to be good in terms of interior, let's just play the hypothetical game and say that's good. The edges have to do their jobs. We'd all like to see, Sylvain Yonjuan, I think he's become a fan favorite at this point, go off and have, some monster numbers. You have to realistically ask yourself is how explosive is Yonjuan going to be coming off an ACL injury? Like, that's not a knock. It really has to be the question. And I know Will's in the background. There have been a lot of reports that Romello Height looks like the real deal. He's rejuvenated. He's excited to be back inside of his home state. And this is a chance for him. And Will might be able to correct this. This kid was either a 4-star or maybe I think he was at least a bottom 4-star when he came into high school. This is a guy that recruiting services thought had an NFL future. He still could have that, but here's a year where you get back home, you get to play back home, and you have a chance to be the dude out there. And so I think for Romello Height, that's an intriguing storyline to watch. Like, supposedly he's looked like a grown man out there handling what a lot of people think is one of the top 5 offensive line units in the ACC. So if you are able to get production out of those guys And then you kind of get to the second line. And I'm not going depth chart. I'm not saying anything in particular there. But you bring in a guy like Thomas Gore. Thomas Gore played at Georgia State, transfers down to Miami, transfers back to, Atlanta. Thomas Gore should be a nice rotational piece at the bare minimum. If you can get anything above that out of Gore, where he's a difference maker, or I should say, if you can get a base level as a nice rotational piece, that's huge. In the latest scrimmage on this past Saturday, a lot of the reports were is they were able to rotate guys in and out, and they didn't see a ton of drop-off. Now, once again, take it with a grain of salt. But if you're able to have defensive linemen that you can rotate in waves, I think that this room is starting to get to a point where you've got enough to have 8 guys, 7 or 8 guys that can make a difference. You're getting closer. I don't think you were there last year. I think in years prior, you relied a lot on Keon White to be a disruptor from different spots on the field. But this year, you might not have a headliner in terms of a guy. But I really do think that you need to be able to be collectively as a unit, be able to disrupt the timing of the quarterback, be able to bottle up the run, and be able just to make a difference and win some battles up front more consistently than you did in 2023. The old adage is that it all begins in the trenches and it ends in the trenches. It could not be more true. If Georgia Tech is going to beat the teams that they should beat in 2024, the D-line has to be better. And I'll one-up you. If you're going to beat some of the teams that people say, well, they may be down, whatever. And I'm talking Florida State, who's got a good offensive line. I'm talking Notre Dame when they come to the bins. Regardless of what you think about that program, they're going to be physical, and they're going to try to manhandle you up front. And they've got a quarterback who's a veteran, understands how to play a game and manage an offense. You have to not just be occasionally making plays, you have to be consistently disruptive at a high level. That's how you would win a Notre Dame game. That's how you would win a Florida State game. You start, and then obviously you get to the one that everyone wants to talk about is one at the end of the season. You saw last year at certain times they did it. Now the bar for doing it all the time is up here, against a program like Georgia right now. Not many people in the country are doing that, but you show that you have the capability. It is literally all about being more consistent. And when you hear some of these coaches talk about and players talk about they're being coached better in terms of what they can do, they're being coached in terms of, tactically about how to get off of a blocker, how to shed a blocker. It does, raise a question of was that not something before? But I think that this is between Simpson and Pope. This is a room where maybe personnel-wise you add a piece or two. You really got to coach these guys up. Tech is going to be relying on a lot of internal development to be able to be better in defensive line position. And that's not a wrong thing. It's not a problem. It's how I think a program like Tech needs to build, and you add auxiliary pieces in like a guy like Romello Height and Thomas Gore. And I want to mention, too, Jordan Vandenberg, too, who has apparently just been an animal throughout fall camp. But if you can just have some guys that are physical and just start to, you have to build depth. That's just bottom line the problem. A lot of people want to point to, well, he wasn't good. Well, when he's playing 40, 50 snaps because your second group isn't performing where they need to be, that's the problem last year. I don't think it's going to be an issue this year. That's why I do think the defensive line could be better. All right, so let's move on here. That's the defensive line. We might have missed some names. I'm just talking about, though, in the grand scheme of what I think this group needs to be. Let's talk linebackers. Bottom line for me, a lot of you sat here after the Syracuse game. I believe it was also the Boston College game, the one we looked at. Obviously, they beat Syracuse, but I'll use Boston College as an example. And even Bowling Green. Your linebacker play was not reliable last year. It just wasn't. Regardless if you want to sit here and say that it was, or say that we, so-and-so wasn't as bad, or we had moments. That's the very definition of what I'm talking about. You had moments. Much like on the defensive line, this linebacking core has to be better and has to be more consistent. Major storyline, Trinius Tatum. A guy that, look, last year they brought in a lot of transfers. Tatum didn't really ever hold down and plant his flag as being a part of the starting two or whatever. It was a constant revolving door last year. You can't have that this season and be successful. But with Tatum in 2024, reports are he feels more comfortable. He's been working with Santucci, who's obviously that's his bread and butter as a defensive coordinator. If Tatum is realizing that potential and becoming more vocal, communicating better, we know he's an athlete. We know he's athletic and he can make different types of plays. So with Trinius Tatum, for all intensive purposes, if Tatum is a guy that can realize his potential, it's going to make a massive, massive impact. I'm going to say this again. I think I've received so much blowback because of this. And I don't care if this kid is drafted with the 22nd pick in the 2026 NFL draft. Kyle Eford is the type of guy that every single program needs. He is not the most naturally gifted player on the field, but he understands the game. He plays 110%, and it's max effort all the time. And you need that. He's a program guy. That's not a knock. I just think it's what Eford needs. Eford brought massive stability to this position group last season. He's going to figure into the equation somehow. Another guy, E.J. Lightsey. E.J. Lightsey, a absolutely dynamic prospect coming out of high school. He goes over to Georgia. He had a terrible injury. Got shot before he headed to Georgia. Never really kind of got things going in Athens. Was buried on the depth chart behind a great, very talented linebacking core. Comes back home essentially to Atlanta. Once again, low risk, high reward. It's a guy with a big ceiling that you could go and do a lot of things with. So is that a part of the equation? Does Lightsey look like he's a part of the equation? You kind of keep rolling and looking at, some of these names over here, and I'm going to add a couple more here. I mean, look, you have Jackson Hamilton. That's another name who's played some football. What does he look like? Redshirt junior, transfer from Louisville. And then I'm going to add in another guy that I got the chance to watch down here in Louisiana last year, and I've been impressed with. And, heard back in the spring, this is a guy who's going to be a contributor on special teams. It's a guy who could force his way into a role if a guy's scuffle or something like that and could find something defensively. But it's Taj Butler. Absolute dog last year when he played down in New Orleans. And so I think that this linebacker room is probably more talented than it was last season. And this is what you paid Tyler Santucci to come in and do. You paid Santucci to come in and be the defensive coordinator, but this is his bread and butter. He has developed everywhere he has been, and you're hoping that he can do the same thing here with a couple of guys who, like I said, haven't realized their potential yet. Maybe they've been bogged down by injuries, buried on a depth chart. Well, here's the time. And then anytime you got a guy like Kyle Lee for big number 44 with a neck roll on your team, you got to feel good about that. Like, that's just a guy that when you see him, that he is going to provide such a consistent influence in that room that it's going to be massive in terms of what you can do on the field, regardless of who you put next to him. So I actually like this linebacker room. I think that this linebacker room it encourages me from a sense of you got a guy who understands the task at hand, as Tyler Santucci. And Maxwell puts up a great comment right here. He goes, when asked if he felt any pressure for the defense to improve, Santucci replied, "No, this is why I was hired." Love that. That's what you want to hear. That's what you want to hear. Linebacker, defensive line have to be better. And it leads me to kind of my final point talking, and this is just in terms of position. We'll get ready for the 2024 outlook. I'm going to say this. Can the DBs catch a break? Like, just bottom line. I feel like this defensive back room, and I might be in the minority on this, I feel like these defensive backs have been the culprit of two things. They've caught a lot of flack because, one, you didn't really have depth that you thought you did. Safety depth's a little concerning for me. So you had guys playing abnormal, just outrageous snap numbers for no reason other than who knows. And then two, you had LaMiles Brooks, Clayton Powell, Jalen King having to make every single play on the field. And for some of those players, it led to playing outside of themselves at times and knowing that not only am I the last line of defense, I've got to make a play because our front seven can't stop it. So I'm going to have to make so many plays in the run game that, one, I'm going to be injured by week 4 and having to nurse that and battle through that. And it's going to affect our pass coverage. And I genuinely do believe that when you see this defensive back room, there's talent there. Gavin says this right here. Amari Harvest coming to get something. If you don't know what I mean when I say that, here you go.
So you know where I live, so come get some. Like, for real. I'm just going to be honest, man. He's almost something done so bad. Come get some. Y'all take care. God bless.
That's what Amari Harvest telling opponents in 2024. I think Amari Harvest is going to be a dude. I think he's going to be very, very good in 24. I think that he can be a guy he's a Swiss Army knife. He can play the corner. He can play the nickel. He can do a lot of different things that you want him to do. I'm excited about what Amari Harvey can bring to the table. You start to look at some of the other, corners. And is that Will? No, that's not Will. We look at some of the other corners. I mean, obviously, when you look at this room, fellas, like, there is a reason that you feel good about Harvey. You've got Omar Daniels, who has shown flashes. You have Zach Tobe, who's shown flashes through fall camp. You have, obviously, Rodney Shelley, who I was talking with someone, close to the Shelley camp and obviously close with and around the program. And they said, don't be surprised this guy pops off in 2024. Like, Shelley has been waiting for his time. He's a junior. It's make or break for him. Here's your chance. You have Shelley. You have Saeed Gibbs. Gibbs, is he going to be able to make the jump from Rhode Island? We're going to find out. But I'm going to tell you probably the best addition, and I'm serious about this. I think the best addition, and I think it's going to make a massive difference, I think it's Warren Burrell. Now, we might get 3 or 4 weeks in the season, and you might say, comically wrong, Bryce, you're an idiot, and, maybe you suffer from a mental illness, and I'll just respond back, I haven't been diagnosed. But what I'll tell you is, all the way out from spring ball, the constant theme that I've been picking up from people is he's a dude. He understands it. He asks all the right questions. And when you take what's in the film room and the meeting room and you go out there on the field, not only has he been a guy that understands it and is a veteran enough to be able to take what you're seeing on the whiteboard or on the projector and put it into play on the field, he's also helping other guys out with it too. I think he's a leader. I think he's one of the leaders, could be one of the leaders of defense. He's one of the guys I'm going to keep my eye on in that first game and throughout the early couple of the weeks. I think Warren Burrell could be a dude for this defense, and it's going to be fun. I think he's going to be really, really fun to watch. Now, let's talk safeties. This is probably, outside of defensive line, this is where I'm concerned, because I don't want to say you don't have players there. Like, I don't get me wrong. I just think that they're solid. They're going to be fine. A lot of people complained about different things last year. Like, I would have said this, a lot of people complained about LaMiles Brooks last year. The dude was playing with hurt the entire season because he literally had to play up in the run game the whole time. And yes, he was opportunistic in taking over turnovers. I think some people were disappointed that he didn't have the 2022 season, or he didn't have the 2023 season like he did the year before, where he was, came into 2023 being one of the more heralded players, leaders of the defense. I think he assumes that role. I think LaMiles Brooks is a guy that could be on the track to play at the next level with a good 2024. And I'm not talking about undrafted free agent. Like, I think that's what he is. And talking with some people who are in that department, they feel the same way. Got to stay healthy. Got to do that. Clayton Powell-Lee, thrust into action as a true freshman, held his own last year, was all right. Here's junior year. Let's see what you can do. Clayton Powell-Lee, it's time to step up. It's time to assume and create essentially 2 center fielders that can be very, very good. But when you look beyond that, that's where the question marks start for me, because you've got a guy like Tay Seymour. I mean, you've got I want to be real about it. Like, you can have Tobe can play over there. Omar Daniels can play safety if need be. He's been more at the nickel position. Shelley's been at the nickel position. So you think, could you put those guys, in a pinch? But let's be real. DJ Moore, I think a fan favorite. Obviously, the news came out, tore his ACL. So DJ Moore's done for the year. That's the converted wide receiver to corner to safety. Moore had some elite speed. I think he would have been able to help you in a lot of ways in the back end and provide some veteran presence. Now what do? Well, you count your blessings that you brought a kid back home and former Louisville transfer Jaden Davis. That is the redshirt freshman from Cincinnati. That's going to be a big token in terms of being able to put that chip down and say, okay, we're not going to some kid who's brand new. We got Jaden Davis back there. I think the wild card in this room is Tay Seymour. How comfortable is he in this defense? I think Seymour was an absolute athlete playing kind of the safety linebacker position back in high school. I believe he went to Villarica. Could be wrong. But when you look at Seymour, he was a special teams contributor. He then turned around, and when need to be, does he know what he's doing? Does he know where he needs to be? And can he play fast and free? Because Tay Seymour is best when he is playing fast and free, as are a lot of guys. So I think that's the wild card. Now, we talked about Jaden Davis, obviously DJ Moore. That kind of hurts, not having him. A guy that I want to also talk about, another Louisiana guy. Shout out Ricky Brumfield to be able to bring another Louisiana guy in. Christian Pritchett. He's obviously trying to learn the ropes of a college football program, what it's like to be, but could Pritchett challenge Davis for one of those backup spots? Maybe he could. I just think that this room has talent. It's got starters. Like, if you're going to roll if you said, Bryce, give me a depth chart, and I'll give you one right here. I think safeties are LaMiles and Clayton Powell-Lee. I think at corner, you could go with Warren Burrell and Amari Harvey. From there, if you want a nickel, we're probably going Rodney Shelley or Omar, being able to, kind of fill in there. Saeed Gibbs. You've got depth. You've got playable depth. And that's big too. But when you kind of hear the rumblings and kind of what's going on and who's excited to see what, I think Tay Seymour's a wild card, because if Brooks or Powell-Lee go down, I think it's going to put this team in a bind. And if Seymour's ready to take the next step, then that's huge. So that's kind of my synopsis of what you could see there. So we've gone through all the positions. We've gone through everything. Let's talk 2024 outlook. What can this defense do? Well, I have maintained this. I think that this Georgia Tech offense is going to be good. And I think they're going to score points. I think they're going to be able to move the ball when they want to. As long as they cut down on self-inflicted mistakes, they're going to be able to do what they want offensively against probably 9 to 10 teams on their schedule. I believe two they're going to have trouble with. And stay tuned Thursday night. We're going through a full season predictions show on Thursday at 7:30 Eastern. No, 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central. It all hinges on the defense. I think if you're expecting a massive, massive jump defensively, and I'm talking about from one of the worst in the country to top 25, that's a leap. That's a leap, and that's a commitment I'm not really willing to make. But if this group can reach top 50, you can start thinking about Charlotte. If it can be a top 50 defensive unit and the offense is top 20 or top 15, you can think about Charlotte. And you might be able to get there. My biggest question is, and I think and I'll just say this, I don't think outside of people in the room that see it every single day, whether you're a super fan, whether you're, on the more negative side like Jonesy is, whatever you are, you can't know the answer to what I'm about to ask until we see it. So maybe it's a cop-out for me. Is the personnel good enough for this defensive staff, which I do believe is improved, to make up the gap? Or is this defensive staff having to get multiple leaps to get it where it needs to be? And it might be a question of where 2025 might be the more realistic season in terms of where everything should click defensively, and also the schedule. Also the schedule works out in that favor too. But, and we're getting to that comment there, Andy, because I do want to touch on that at the end of the show. But defensively, the biggest question I have is personnel's, you've got some new faces. Is it good enough to where, with the added addition of a better defensive staff, which I believe it is on paper, and from everything you hear it is that enough? Is that enough to make it top 50, top 40, and get you to Charlotte? Because, I mean, like, we'll just talk about this on Thursday. If Georgia Tech had Virginia Tech's schedule, if Georgia Tech had other schedules, we're talking about them as an ACC contender. And not just on this show, which is Georgia Tech centered. You're talking about it nationally. The problem is they don't. And you're going to have to win some games that not a lot of people are going to think you're going to outside of the fan base. Let's be realistic here. You're going to have to out-physical Notre Dame. You're going to have to out-athlete and out-scheme Miami again. You're going to have to do some things that you haven't done in a while, and you have to do them really, really, really consistently. So I think defensively, you've got guys. You've got some better depth. Safety concerns me. Defensive line's going to have to step up, though. Like, you just need Romello Height to go off. Like, you need Romello Height to get 7, 8, 9, 10 sacks. You need Sylvain Yanjuan to feel more comfortable. You need Kevin Harris to do A, B, and C. You need some of these freshmen to step up. You're just going to need some of these guys to play above what the industry level expectation is. Now, look, there's going to be some fans that sat there and said, I told you so. Nobody in their right mind can tell you anything that's going to happen this season. We did schedule predictions last year. I do believe we got it right at 6-6 in the regular season, but nobody would have been able to tell you how they got to 6-6. Losses to Bowling Green and a win against Miami in the fashion they did. So college football is unpredictable. And so nobody can really tell you that A, B, or C is going to happen. And so that's why I say that's my biggest question. 2024 outlook, I think they'll be a top 75 defense. I feel comfortable penciling it in there. If they can be top 75, you can get 7 or 8 wins. Because offensively, I think they're going to be good. But we'll get into predictions kind of later on. All right, let's get to a couple of comments. Your pet cat meow. FSU doesn't have the... Is this Pete, by the way, Will? Who is this? FSU doesn't have the firepower to beat us by more than 10. We're going to take a look at that game next week, and I think a lot of you are going to be surprised about how I feel. Nancy said, do I want a souvenir from Ireland? Nancy, if you get me a souvenir, what did I just call that? A souvenir, not a souvenir. If you give me a souvenir, we're putting it in the background. So, yes, would love to. Green says, honestly, in my opinion, I think GT is about 2 years away from making a run of the ACC championship if they continue to trend upward. I agree. Ian says that top 50 would be awesome. Hal says a couple more stops per game, give the ball back to the O. Well. Brian says we are thinking about Charlotte. Nick says GT loses big to FSU. Another Nick L says, I think in a Santucci defense, there's first rotation and second rotation rather than starters and backups. Wants to keep everyone fresh. Yeah, I would see that. Kind of keep going here to a couple more comments. Howell says that Key is pretty happy with the defense and what he has seen after the last scrimmage. Pass rush and run stop were way better. I think we can win this close if we do slightly better than we did against USIC GA. Then we can do this. I'm guessing you're saying gear. Joe the Pilot did want to get this comment. He goes, I was in Clemson this week and met a GA for the football team. He said the new defensive staff is legit. Yeah, that's all that's what people are saying. Joe the Pilot says, I'll be happy with top 75. Look. You want progress. And look, everyone would love for this to be a top 15 unit. I think when people look at what he did at Duke last year, he had some dudes. Like, he had some dudes. And you're going to play one of those dudes when you play Virginia Tech later this season. But he had some guys. And unless 2 or 3 unless 2 or 3 players at Tech this year on the defensive line become dudes, I don't know that you're going to be able to do what you did with Duke last year defensively. But we'll see. We'll see. Could be wrong. Would love to be wrong. That's kind of where I sit with that. Okay. We're going to round out the show. Well, let's get this question right here. Clayton said, I saw something on ESPN that we were about middle on the turnovers force. Do you think we force more this year? I don't know. I mean, I think they can. I just don't become overly reliant on it. I think they can. Okay. Ralph says Tech will finish at a 53rd best defense. Well, a lot of people take that. Okay. We've got a common comment. Let's get right here to this. Christian Garrett just decommitted his crystal ball to us. Well, yeah. Christian Garrett decommits from Georgia. Georgia Tech can land him. And then Montega, I'm guessing you're asking about this specifically, what I just talked about. Let's get really quick. We're going to round this out with just a little recruiting update. Obviously, big day tomorrow. Georgia Tech fans are going to be tuned in. I think it's around 2:30 that Josh Petty is going to be announcing the 5-star lineman, and it's going to be interesting. You got to watch. For a lot of people who are subscribed to 24/7 Sports, put in a crystal ball. I mean, we'll just see. We'll see. Stay tuned to the channel. That's all I'll tell you. So I like where they sit with Petty heading in tomorrow. And then, I mean, Christian Garrett, let's get a little quick look on Christian Garrett before we get out of here. Prince Avenue, Aaron Philo is pulling on that one, a 4-star, top 247 player. He's the 17th best player in the state of Georgia. This is a guy who's a track guy too, competes in track and field throwing events. State qualifier as a 10th grader. Tech was in on him. He committed to Georgia very early on, I believe. But obviously just decommitted, or he committed to Georgia back in June. So it feels like it's been forever since June 9th. August 11th, though. It's Chase said I had him at 5-7, shaking my head. I was a game off, Chase. A game off. I don't know what you want from me. It's not like Georgia Tech went 10-2 last year and I put him at 5-7. I'll say this. I'll just say this on Christian Garrett. You can clip it if you like. Feel very, very good about where Georgia Tech stands with Christian Garrett. And I think that it's going to be a lot of fun to see where this recruiting class ends up. Hey, thanks so much for watching a longer show tonight. We're going to be live again on Thursday. Ralph says Princess Avenue doesn't play anyone. Except for us, Ralph, when they were beating the snot out of us back in 2015, 2013, or whatever it was. We're going to be live again on Thursday night. Full season schedule predictions. But subscribe to the channel. There's going to be some other content coming out that you don't want to miss, as we're going to be talking a little bit of recruiting, talking some other stuff. And so subscribe to the YouTube channel if you hadn't already. If you're watching over on X, which I know a lot of people are, we thank you for joining over. Look at this. Hey, over 120 people watching over on X. And we've almost got 50 people watching on the YouTubes, which I do believe is more than 30. I do believe. Yes. I only see us lose in FSU because we won't be quite ready, and I think we can definitely win. Yeah, I agree with you. We're going to have all that and more. All right, so here's the show schedule. Lock it in, people. Sundays and Thursdays, Georgia Tech content. Mondays and Wednesdays, myself, Ralph, and Will talking college football, talking the week that is. Georgia Tech will be mixed in a lot of conversation, especially next week, going into week 0. And then we are going to be hit the ground running next week, man. I cannot wait. We're going to have a live post-game show. I did start against Prince Avenue, big time. Yeah, it was awful, terrible. You can watch the film. I'll link it in the Discord. But before we get out of here, for real, 2 more things. 1, if you want to support us, click the link down below. You can help us out and help us continue to do what we do. We love doing this. We want to keep it rolling. And so just, hey, anything you feel led to donate, we would love to do that. And if not, if you can't donate anything, this is what I want you to do right now. I want you to hit subscribe on YouTube, and I want you to send the channel to 5 friends. Make sure they do it as well. Where's our boy John Burns? John Burns was is John Burns even hopped in the comments tonight? Yes, he has. John, you can get that comment in there. If we can get 40,000 people subscribing to the Crowded Booth, if we get, look, donate so Will and I can get our jobs. If we get 40,000 people to subscribe to the Crowded Booth, I'm moving back to Georgia, and I'm going to live right next to Will. That's the plan. All right, so we're going to rock and roll. We're going to get out of here. It's going to be a lot of fun. Tune in Thursday night live, 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern, full scale preview. It's going to be fun. Okay, he said the GoFundMe's not there, so it's not in the bio. See, this is why we pseudo hired that guy in Maxwell. I got you right here, Maxwell. See, this is why Ralph needs to be in here so he can put these links in here. Just post the link right there in the comments. Make sure you click on that link. Check it out. Make sure you support us. It's a lot of fun. And also, as we talked about, August 31st, week 1 in Atlanta, Georgia State taking on Georgia Tech. We're going to be there doing a live show, hanging out, having a good time. We'll have food. We're going to have some giveaways. We're going to have some ticket giveaways. We're going to have some Crowd Booth merch. It's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you're there for that. We're going to be hanging out all day. It's going to be a lot of fun to be there for that game. And the whole crew will be there too. So it'll be a good time. Come and join us. Hit like, hit subscribe before you leave. We will catch you next time. This is Swarm Talk, best Georgia Tech show you're going to find on the internet. Even you, Rec Talk. We do appreciate you, but even you. Good luck on that dynasty, pal. We'll catch you next time. See you later.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The crowded booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.